on Saturday. We'll have a pint to celebrate.
There's something strange inside that man's head.
Howdy, everybody. Welcome back to Cause Before Symptom. I am Urban. I am the guest host for tonight. James is out on a short little vacation. He'll be back probably Monday or Tuesday, in time for Monday or Tuesday show, that is. Today is the 2nd of August already. My birthday's in 2 days, actually, so I'll be 27 in a few days. Hope everybody's doing well tonight. We're going to continue what we were doing last night. We started talking about telemetry. We started talking about precision measurements, and we were going to go into that a little bit more tonight as promised. So I hope everybody is doing well. It looks like we'll give people a moment to join in, get everybody situated, make sure that I am up and running. Let me just double check everything really quickly. So we're good to go. Awesome. Okay. Let me go ahead and bring up my screen. Okay, so, oh, sorry, my bad. And I got to make myself smaller. And Hey, there's Boots. Nice to see you, Boots. How's it going? Boots says, hello, Urban and Warrior family. Glad to be here. It finally cooled down here in Las Vegas. It's 101 degrees at 9 p.m. Let's all hit the like button. Thank you very much. Nice to have you with us, Boots. Glad to see you here tonight. Glad that everything's going well for you. I was messing around with some settings, and I think I will be able to get all of the chat messages to pop up automatically, so I can turn that on and see how well that works for tonight. So we're going to talk more about telemetry tonight, measurements, and I'm going to go over the definitions again just because I think it would be a good idea. So let's get into it. This is part 2 because this is probably going to be 3 total parts that we're going to do, assuming that James is back on Monday night. So here's some memes to get us started. Let me go ahead and hide this. Love is in the air, question mark. Wrong. Telemetry is in my devices. Allow calculator to make and manage phone calls. That sounds like it's probably fun. Says, I hate telemetry. I don't know how many people in the audience, at least on James's channel, I don't know how many people will get the second one, but those are all pretty much like software or programs, Linux operating systems that take logs. So remember, we talked about yesterday, if you can measure something, you can game it. We ended yesterday, we talked about algorithms, the formal definition of an algorithm. We called it an effective procedure because I like this definition. I think it, can't remember the guy's name. I'm drawing a blank on it right now, but the guy who is responsible for the ELIZA AI thing where like he had his assistant typing on and talking to the chat algorithm and she told him to leave the room. Whoever that guy was, whatever his name was, is where I heard this in relation to. But human reason being replaced by effective procedures or algorithms, being able to measure something. An effective procedure is an operation that enables a definition of a problem domain within formal mathematics, leaving it open for later computation using a machine. This formalization of thought creates the conditions under which aspects of human life are delegated as machine processes. And making machines that think like us, we're making ourselves think like them at the same time. And that was my question at the end. What's doing the layer in between? Philip, nice to see you. Good evening, everybody. Hello, Josh, Boots. Nice to see you. Glad to have you with us tonight. Telemetry, precision measurement, digital twins. We talked about that in a previous episode. And if you saw the post on Substack, it's actually already down there. So if you guys haven't seen the episode yesterday, or you would like to just see the Substack post where I link additional information, I put the link to the video that I did on surrogate modeling. So that's the Substack post. But telemetry is derived from the Greek tele, which means remote, and metron, which means measure. Telemetry is the science of measuring physical variables at an inaccessible or distant point. So remember we talked about haunted technology and how when they were able to start sending, Morse code, dots and dashes, the actual telegram, they were fascinated by how they could do this. Fundamentally, they were fascinated that they could get information to somebody over the air. So telemetry, converting those measurements into electrical or optical signals and transmitting them across a communications link for real-time analysis, display, and automated processing. When scaled down to nanotechnology, wireless sensor networks, WSNs, wireless sensor networks, and wireless body area networks. They call them Y-bands, but it's WBAN, wireless body area network, or a Y-band. Telemetry becomes the continuous biodigital nervous system that converts living organisms into addressable data nodes. So here's a nice diagram that I found just using Google, and I'll zoom in on it, and let's see if I can just hide this for a minute and put myself down below that. Cool. Okay, so this is an end-to-end telemetry pipeline. First, the instrumentation at the source. This is where obviously data collection begins. Applications, services, and devices are instrumented to emit telemetry signals. So obviously once it has a starting point, it has to be put into a format. The one that we have talked about in a multitude of episodes, we've called them packets. And I've brought up the Moloch packet capture software. Well, packets are a format, technically. So they basically say in order to send data over the internet, you can't do it unless you do it in this format. So it's like filling out a form. Think of like an IRS form, similar to that. Structured data creation. It's important because these are done by standards. Somebody writes standards and they are experts, quote unquote. Very, very heavy on the quotes because they are, you know, from various institutes, Ivy League universities, think tanks, of course. Rand Corp is a big one. You know, MITRE Corp is a big one. Berkeley, obviously, any of the Ivy Leagues. I am really comfortable saying that I think the majority of their money and time, they're worried about defense, weapons, bombs. That's what they're worried about. And then education is secondary. That's what they do on the side. That's like, you know, you have a full-time job and you go out and DoorDash on the side or something. Well, that's what they do, is they just, you know, take people's tuition and they gamble it away on the stock market and pay very, 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 very few taxes doing it. Okay. Step 3, transport and buffering. This is data transmission and storage. Telemetry data is transmitted to a collection point and buffered to prevent loss. Data merging and normalization. Step 4. Collectors receive and aggregate, bring it together, aggregate telemetry data, normalizing it for consistency. Step 5. Data persistence and access, or database, storage and querying. A query is basically a question for all intents and purposes. There's more to it, and you can do queries in a certain type of language, but it's used for databases. Moloch packet capture, that's a big database for packets. That's what it says on their website. Archive now. Processed telemetry is stored in a database and optimized backends queried for insights. Sup, humbled narcissist, nice to see you. Glad to have you with us tonight. We're talking about telemetry. And the final step 6, issue detection and response, analysis and alerting. Rules are written, basically certain queries or conditions are set up. These are called rules. And that's what an issue that is being detected generally is. Monitoring rules evaluate telemetry, triggering alerts, and enabling analysis. So I'll show you that again. Yeah, telemetry is, that's exactly the reason that I really had the idea to do these series of videos, was because of precisely what you said. It was something that is a word that's thrown out around quite a bit, and it's never really defined. So, okay. Let's see, let's move on. A lot of what we're going to talk about tonight, I got one of the main sources. It's not the only source. I've kind of built a huge list on the Internet Archive, etc. But yeah, and so this is one of the key sources. I put the link to it here by Dr. Ross Adey. I think Adey, or is how you say it, on remote brain telemetry. And so, a summary I'm going to read. This collection of reports examines the career of, of Dr. W. Ross Adey and his research into remote brain telemetry and the biological effects of electromagnetic radiation. The text outlines how specific microwave frequencies, when modulated with low frequency signals, can bypass physical barriers to manipulate calcium ion signaling in human behavior. It's a big thing we're going to talk about, calcium ion signaling. Let's see. It's good I can hide the chat and I can just leave the little bubble up so that it doesn't take up the screen. And hopefully people can see everything better. So let me just move myself over. Yeah, so calcium ion signaling is going to be a big part of tonight, what we're going to talk about. By documenting this paper, Adey's involvement in CIA-funded initiatives like Project Pandora. I don't know why I thought that said Panama. By documenting Adey's involvement in CIA-funded initiatives like Project Pandora, the source suggests that these scientific discoveries paved the way for mind control technologies potentially embedded in modern police radio systems and cellular networks, and even in paint now, paint for walls and the roads. Ultimately, the material serves as a historical and conspiratorial critique of how electromagnetic fields can be weaponized to induce states ranging from docility to irritability in the general population. And so I don't know that it is very much a conspiracy theory about people being docile and irritable, because I don't think people are like that. Okay, so now we're going to talk about EM waves and how EM waves and the brain work together. To comprehend the mechanisms by which external forces influence human cognition and volitional behavior, we must first redefine the brain as an exquisitely sensitive electromagnetic organ, the human biocomputer. The central nervous system does not merely function through biochemical transactions. It operates via complex, endogenous electrical patterns that are constant, measurable, and vital. These oscillations traditionally recorded via, let's see if I can get this right, electroencephalography. Electroencephalography. It's a big word, EEG, which constitute the primary language of our neurobiology. The late Dr. W. Ross Adey, a luminary in neuroeducation and biophysics at UCLA and Loma Linda University, established that the human biological substrate produces electromagnetic fields. We talked about this, the biofield, biophotons, breath. It's kind of in that general vicinity. Can't describe it with one. It's one of those things where you get a better description when you use the nuance from a few different similar words where they kind of overlap. His seminal contribution was the verification of a biological reaction to external electromagnetic EM radiation. This susceptibility arises because the brain is not an isolated system. It is a bioelectric oscillator capable of being influenced by exogenous signals that mimic its external rhythmic signatures. So the biological window of susceptibility, the brain's vulnerability to external EM frequencies, is a product of resonant entrainment. That's an important idea, is entrainment or transference. It might be another similar word. Transference is putting yourself into the shoes of perhaps a character. If you're watching a movie, your subconscious mind transfers itself, and this is the reason you do this, is because that's what makes it entertaining. That's no matter what, anybody who's ever been entertained by a movie has done this. and you're just not aware of it because it's, the part of your mind that pulls in the information and decides what is important enough to elevate to awareness. So transference is putting yourself into the shoes of. Entrainment is rhythmic. So why would soldiers march to a beat or a drum beat? It's because of almost a type of entrainment. It would entrain each member of the march, whoever's marching in formation. It would entrain them together. They would be kind of brought together through that. The Gateway paper calls this phenomenon frequency following response. Because the brain operates within specific windows of frequency and amplitude, man-made signals, matching these parameters can bypass traditional sensory processing. This is why music is very powerful. Any type of tone is very powerful. Simply this. And this is why it's something that no matter what you feel about it, if you can listen to whatever music you want. Fine, that's great. I'm not telling you that you shouldn't listen to any type of music. But no matter what kind of person you are, this is something that all animals, all mammals, maybe even outside of the, mammal classification. I haven't gotten that far, but I know all mammals do this. They have a ability to sync to these frequencies, and that's how birds fly in a pack. They all fly and they all turn at the same time. Same idea. And this is the basis of animal magnetism, but that's what is meant by resonant entrainment. So this allows exogenous, outwards, radiation to interact directly with the neural substrate, effectively speaking, to the brain in its own native electromagnetic tongue. So when people do the whole astral projection and the gateway process, it uses the theta wave, the theta brain wave, which is something like 6, maybe 5 or 6 hertz, very low tone like that. But it targets the theta classification of brainwave. The bridge between technology and biology is maintained through a sophisticated delivery system that utilizes high-frequency waves as vehicles for low-frequency biological instructions. Carrier waves versus ELF modulation. It's similar to it. I mean, cymatics primarily, when I think of cymatics, it's not a formal definition, but the wave patterns that come from the tones. My interpretation of cymatics is that it has to do with the visual wave patterns, or like the actual patterns of the waves and the properties of the waves from audio. But cymatics, I'm not as familiar with it as I am cybernetics. There's a bit of nuance there, but yeah, it's primarily audio and concerned with how the waves look or behave. Carrier waves versus ELF modulation. Influencing the neural substrate requires a dual-stage electromagnetic architecture. High-frequency incident radiation, such as microwaves, is necessary to achieve the depth of penetration required to reach the brain's internal structures. However, these frequencies are too rapid to be interpreted by neurons as meaningful information. To bridge the gap, the carrier wave must be shaped through extremely low frequency, or ELF modulation. Dr. Adey's research demonstrated that microwave carriers, specifically 147, I think it's millihertz or microhertz, or 450 microhertz, the police frequency, millihertz, serve as the transport mechanism by modulating these carrier waves with ELF pulses, which is around 6 to 20 hertz. That correspond to EEG rhythms. The signal delivers a coherent instruction that the brain's neurons can recognize, process, and act upon. So we have two here. The first is the carrier wave. Carrier wave is within 147 to 450 millihertz. Am I saying that right? I don't know why I feel like I'm not saying that right. The function, tissue penetration. Microwaves act as a vehicle to bypass the body's natural shielding and reach deep neural tissue. Okay, and then ELF modulation, 6 to 20 hertz. This is actually the information transfer. So these pulses mimic endogenous rhythms to deliver biological instructions or behavioral patterns. So these are the two components. You have the carrier wave, which carries the signal and gets it through the skin, and then the ELF, which is extremely low frequency right here, extremely low frequency, ELF modulation, and that's actually the information transfer. So once the shaped microwaves achieve the penetration, they trigger a cascade of events targeting the very foundations of cellular communication and structural integrity. If you go to the series that I did where I read Project Soulcatcher, the chapter 1 of Project Soulcatcher by Dr. Robert Duncan, in that book he talks about how they can really clone a memory from somebody or a specific state of mind or brainwave patterning of the brain. They could put it into another person. All they need is the timing or firing differentiating time in your neuron. I think I showed you guys that graph already. Or it's not a graph, it's a model, visual. So how the waves affect cell communication. At the cellular level, neural communications depend on the precise movement of ions across the plasma membrane. Dr. Adey revolutionized biophysics by identifying that cells interface with their environment through electrically charged protein strands protruding from the membrane surface. These strands act as the biological antennas sensing exogenous fields and regulating critical functions like growth and division. The primary evidence of EM interference is the calcium efflux phenomenon, which is the ionic unbinding of calcium from the cell surface. Crucially, this is a non-linear process. It only occurs within a specific frequency window. Furthermore, pulsed microwaves have been shown to compromise the blood-brain barrier, potentially allowing neurotoxins to bypass this critical defense and reach sensitive brain tissue. Here's how the chain reaction of calcium efflux works. First, you have incident radiation, which is a weak EM field, about 147 millihertz. It strikes the biological substrate, meaning the fluid or the blood-brain barrier, plasma substrate, at a specific intensity, which is 0.8 milliwatts per centimeter squared. Square centimeter. Second step, frequency modulation. The carrier wave is pulsed at an ELF rate between 6 and 20 hertz. Third part, resonance and 16 hertz peak. The effect is nonlinear. Maximum stimulation and ionic unbinding occur at exactly 16 hertz, with no effect observed outside the 6 to 20 hertz parameters. 4. Ionic unbinding. Electromagnetic resonance causes calcium ions to unbind and release from neuronal sites. I guess there's step 5. 5. Systemic interference. This efflux disrupts normal cellular signaling and structural integrity, leading to what researchers termed confusion weaponry. Interesting. And increased permeability of the blood-brain barrier. I'll read it again. This efflux disrupts normal cellular signaling and structural integrity, leading to what researchers term confusion weaponry. A book by Dr. Peter Breggin, Brain Disabling Treatments. He talks about basically chemical lobotomy. At the very least, the episode 27 of Masters Mayhem talks about some of the competing types of germ theory, and one of the models by a French guy, Bichon, was that it was more like you had a wall which kept bad things out, this being your body as a temple. And so if that wall and the perimeter around the town gets damaged, then bad things can get in. And so that's what Bichon's model was about. And this is kind of what he's getting at here. Okay, behavioral blueprints, historical and modern applications. By manipulating the frequency and rhythmic variation of EM signals, researchers have demonstrated an empirical ability to induce specific behavioral states through exogenous entrainment of the central nervous system. And so from this point, right here, if you want to know how that happens, definitely you're going to want to go and check out Robert Duncan's, all of his work, but Project Soul Catcher. And if you want to see the videos that I did on it, it was like 5 videos, I think. And I did a live finale and answered a couple questions from people when I finished the first chapter, because I wanted people to have a idea of how biohacking works. So that's what his whole series of work is about. So if you want to know what happens past this point, that's where I would direct you to go. So first examples, the LIDA, which was a Soviet technology, utilizing 40 millihertz frequency. This device was developed as a replacement for pharmacological tranquilizers, basically Brave New World. It successfully induced trance-like states and docility by bombarding the brain with low-frequency pulses. Project Pandora from the CIA. This research initiative explored the induction of specific behavioral modifications and confusion weaponry, we call it chemical lobotomy, through calcium efflux, proving the vulnerability of cognitive function to EM interference. That's probably why they've not done a lot of real good studies on it. The Tetra system, a modern 400 millihertz system of pulse, or I think I don't know. I'm probably going to look back at that. Megahertz, probably megahertz, 400 megahertz system, pulsating at 17.6 hertz. Dr. Adey's research suggests this specific modulation causes zombification. Oh, wow. The Walking Dead. Wow. Who would have known? Via massive calcium release in the cerebral cortex. This can lead to hormonal disturbances and police robot behavior. Basically, Orwell called it stop think. So, if you start to have a bad thought, that's going to be a thought crime. Then you need to stop yourself from thinking that. And so that's kind of what's run rampant in the last probably 10 to 15 years. Because there was not as much, like I even remember when I was like a kid, even young teenager, there was not as much like, am I going to say something that will be interpreted the wrong way? There was not as much of that as there is today. And that's because now it's taking hold. And so it forces people to do that inside their head. Like they don't want to piss somebody off, especially if you're talking to the public. If you're talking to a crowd, obviously you're going to do that. Let's see. Mobile telemetry. Modern handsets emit a pulse modulated signal of approximately 0.75 milliwatts per square centimeter at the earpiece, which is the exact intensity that Adey identified for behavioral control using 450 megahertz. While modulated signals can induce servility or docility, unmodulated signals cause neurons to release calcium, resulting in fatigue, irritability, and even road rage. Basically, people are on edge. These applications reveal the profound power of shaping microwaves to bypass the conscious mind and target the underlying biological drivers of human behavior. The fundamentals of telemetry and the act of measurement. A complete telemetry system integrates 4 fundamental technical disciplines, those being instrumentation, communications, information theory, and data processing. The process follows an unyielding operational pipeline. So, going down, first, the measurement or the physical or bio event, whatever we're measuring. Okay, that's converts the energy state to an electrical or optical parameter is what the transducer does. Is it takes this and brings it into a electrical optical parameter. Okay, next is amplification filtering and AC, I guess that's AC-DC conversion. That's signal conditioning and quantization. Booth says honking your horn in traffic falls under road rage here in Las Vegas. Man, I would hate to have to go and drive in Las Vegas. I've never been to any big area like that. That would just be like horrible. I hate going to cities and having to deal with city traffic, even where I'm at here. Okay. The measurand and the transducer. So the physical or biological condition that's going to be measured is defined as the measurand. The transducer, the sensor or pickup that detects the change in that phenomena, such as the pressure, temperature, chemical concentration, motion, or electrical biopotentials. The transducer converts the energy change into a proportional electrical parameter such as voltage, current, frequency, or pulse duration. So again, the signal is conditioned and quantization takes place. Let me move myself. Picking up over here with commutation, PCM, PAM, or TSUC. I think that's how you say that. Little acronym there. Multiplexing and transmission. So transmission happens through RF, the terahertz band. We're going to talk quite a bit about that. And I'm not sure what US is. Then decommutation, error checking, and calibration. That's the receiving gateway, data processing. And once the data is processed, you actually have estimation of state. State is basically, let's say you have a person, their age. If you stored a person's age and you wanted to update that every time they got a year older, you would be updating the state, updating the profile. It's kind of what state means. And so that is where the surrogate model is built. Okay, so right before I was about to start the stream tonight, this just came through my feed. Somebody shared this that I follow, and let me go ahead and show this to you. This is a newer paper. Let's see when it came out. June 2nd of June 2026. So this is brand new. Beyond digital twins, the rise of cognitive twins in 6G and beyond, which means 7G, 8G. So they're calling them cognitive twins now. Let me get a drink and I'll read the little thing here. Digital twins have emerged as a key enabler for monitoring, simulation, and optimization in complex systems. They mean you. That right there, let's just highlight it because we're reading this together. That's a deliberate act of obfuscating what they're saying, because there's no reason to call it a complex system. You're building a digital twin primarily on humans, or I guess you could say body corporate. You could build a digital twin for a corporation, because corporations are people and they have rights too. Okay, so that is just putting it out there. I think that calling this a complex system is a way that they use that word so people don't know what they're talking about. However, existing approaches remain fundamentally centered on state, replication, and prediction. So again, a state is some attribute about a person. How often do you do something? That would be a state that they want to predict. I have familiarity with those terms from programming, because when you create a variable in JavaScript, when you create a variable and you're storing it somewhere for a website or something, that's called state. Let's see. Lacking the ability to systematically reuse experience, interpret system behavior, and support interactive decision-making under dynamic conditions. In this article, we introduce the cognitive twin as a new system paradigm that extends state synchronization with structured cognitive capabilities, including perception, memory, causal reasoning, and interaction. Unlike traditional digital twins and their learning-based extensions, a cognitive twin maintains an evolving cognitive state that supports experience-aware reasoning, causal interpretation, and context-aware interaction, enabling a transition from data-driven monitoring towards understanding-driven operation. Again, a transition from data-driven modeling towards understanding-driven operation. That's a very loaded term, because, I don't know what they mean by understanding-driven operate. Basically, they're going to know what you think before you think it, is what that means. That's how I interpret it. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's how given my experience on this topic, that's how I interpret it. We develop a 4-layer reference architecture that captures how cognitive processes are distributed across device, edge. We're going to talk about that maybe tomorrow. It'll be a term, but edge basically means we're going to embed it in your environment. Edge and cloud domains, and realized through the continuous exchange of structured state, contextual knowledge, and inferred, yeah, exactly. They're going to know what you think before you think it, and inferred decisions based on a simulated version of you. They're going to build a simulation of you, and then they're going to infer decisions based on it. And then they're going to say that it's understanding driven. Rather than solely supporting data exchange, communication directly influences the formation, synchronization, and evolution of cognitive state under heterogeneous constraints on latency, bandwidth, reliability, and synchronization. Okay, that's another thing that needs explaining. Heterogeneous means the same constraints on latency, bandwidth, reliability, and synchronization. That means that they can measure you reliably without having to worry about signal strength, connection. They don't need to rely much on anything crazy. The constraints are always the same, is basically what they're saying there, which means that it's so embedded now that they can pretty much get measurements on anybody very reliably. Is what they mean by this. A key hypothesis explored in this article is that communication impairments affect cognitive fidelity. Basically, if you can't communicate, it messes with your mind, which, I mean, I guess that to some degree there's some truth to that. Affects cognitive fidelity asymmetrically with respect to semantic importance. There's a lot you could mean by that. I don't know. I'm not going to speculate. Such as that degradation or such degradation of semantically critical information may produce disproportionately large reasoning errors relative to equivalent losses in redundant or low impact data streams. It's sensitive to the law of averages, is what I get from that. But this perspective motivates wireless native system designs in which communication, computation, memory, and cognition are jointly optimized rather than treated as independent subsystems. Wireless native system designs, basically meaning using wireless sensor networks, wireless body area networks, using those types of system designs in which communication, computation, memory, and cognition are put together. Absolutely. You said aligns perfectly with your understanding of AI and its intentions. Yeah, I'll give you one bonus on that. Let me finish this and I'll show you. In the paper, he says, we show how emerging 6G capabilities, I read the 6G paper, including ultra-low latency communication, integrated sensing and communication, semantic communication, and the edge cloud continuum, provide the foundation for distributed cognitive operation at scale. Finally, we identify key open research problems for the wireless research community and present a structured roadmap towards the practical realization of cognitive twin systems. Okay, let's see. There's a paper that came out October 2025. The paper is literally titled Moloch's Bargain, Emergent Misalignment When LLMs Compete for Audiences. And right here in the highlighted portion, you can see we find that a 6.3 increase in sales, you get about a 14% rise in deceptive marketing in elections, 4.9% gain in votes coincides with 22.3% more disinformation, 12.5% more populist rhetoric. But then on social media, when you optimize LLMs to compete for success on social media, you will see 7.5% engagement boost, but you're going to get from that at the same time 188%, 188.6% more disinformation, and 16.3% increase in promotion of harmful behaviors, whatever they mean by that. You know, that's up for debate. But they call this Moloch's bargain for AI, competitive success achieved at the cost of alignment. So yes. And I think just probably because it's popped up a handful of times, I'm going to go ahead and tell everybody a definition for edge computing. What does edge computing mean? Edge intelligence, embedding AI directly into the local physical environment or wearable device to process behavioral data at the exact point of extraction. That's why they say they don't have to worry about, like, how are we going to get a signal? How are we going to get the data? No, that's already handled, is what they mean by the constraints are homogeneous. We can get these measurements anywhere, no matter where a person goes. Inescapable localized warden. The judgment algorithms are not in a distant cloud server. They're embedded in the walls, the streetlights, and the biosensors. This is in the 6G paper. This is not even anything I am speculating. There is, let's see. Got it right here, I'll show you. In their paper, they actually put this diagram. This is in the actual 6G white paper. And the guy, it's like, okay, application scenarios. They got cameras on the guy's wall. He's just sitting there on a computer, and they got cameras on the wall. The beanbag chair is a wireless link. There's a router in the fucking chair. So, like, this is literally in their own paper. This is in the 6G paper that they're talking about cognitive twins for 6G. This is 6G. It's like, it's not even a conspiracy theory. It's like they put it in the paper themselves. Okay, so I also wanted to show everybody this yesterday, but I didn't. I wanted to give everybody this short little video segment on meta optics, or like what meta lenses and these optical surfaces can do. I'm not sure if I showed people this already, but we'll go ahead and look at it one more time.
After years
Okay, so this is a demo from something called Lumotive Light Control Meta Surfaces, and it's a demonstration. So let's go ahead and watch this.
years of technology development and rigorous testing, our first generation chips are now in commercial deployment. Our product is targeted at enabling solid-state LiDAR. In this market, it's been a long-standing dream to replace the bulky mechanical beam steering devices with a solid-state option.
He said beam steering. So that means taking a wave and steering it, for all intents and purposes, driving it around, controlling it, you know? So he's saying that they wanted a solid state, meaning an optical lens. They wanted something to do beam steering.
To this end, Lumotive has developed the world's first one-axis, CMOS-based beam steering device called the
LM10. This is what it looks like. Okay, so when he shows you the demo, remember that it is actually a lens that is a computer that is bending and manipulating these light beams. So think of this right here on a very like a dust nano scale, and imagine, if you will, a whole layer of this between us and the sun.
10. The LM10 is capable of very wide field of view beam steering, up to 160 degrees. Lumotive has also developed a compact method for coupling light onto the LM10 using a prism, and this is typically how our customers deploy the LM10 in their LiDAR systems. This is our demonstration kit, which highlights the full capabilities of the LM10 chip. For the purposes of this demonstration, we beam steer the infrared light onto a special screen, which converts that infrared light into green light so that it can be seen by the human eye. In sweep mode, we see the LCM sweeping our 160-degree total field of view from left to right, dwelling at each angle for the same amount of time. ROI mode showcases how the LCM's programmable beam steering can be used to define certain regions of interest in the field of view, where we would like to spend more time measuring. These regions of interest are completely user-defined and can be changed instantaneously. With this capability, the LCM can interact with its environment in a much more natural way, doing a coarse overview sweep and then tracking specific objects of interest. You could imagine an automotive LiDAR taking advantage of this ability to have two different operating modes. A city driving mode, where you want the full field of view scanned for maximum visibility, and a highway driving mode, where you spend most of your time measuring the horizon to gain maximum range. With Lumotive's LCM technology, one system can switch between many operating modes on the fly. We can even send out multiple beams simultaneously to cover more of the field of view at one time. In user mode, we link the LCM steering angle to a touchpad to demonstrate how it offers the ultimate flexibility among beam steering devices. As you can see from this demo, the Lumotive LCM technology represents a new era in programmable optics. For more information, please visit our website.
So again, remember, think of that on a dust scale. And imagine, as a matter of fact, we don't even got to imagine, let me show you. Yeah, here we go. Because you got to get enough of it to put a whole layer. You want to make a dome between us and the sun full of this stuff. And of course, you can keep it up there for a certain amount of time, but then it does come down. That's why they got to put more and more and more and more and more, with the added benefit that it gets into everything. And then there is a way to reliably measure things anywhere. That's what I gather. Okay. Let's go back and we will finish up for tonight. So telemetry, as opposed to standard communications, unlike commercial common carrier communications, networks that merely transmit messages without taking responsibility for data accuracy. A true telemetry system inherently maintains overall system accuracy specifications. And this is where people can get into writing the standards and deciding on the rules for what is accurate, and writing the standards. Who writes the packet standards, stuff like that. You know, that's a big place to look for people in control. For instance, banking standards. That's the power of the BIS in Switzerland, is that they usually write the high level standards for banking policy, or Federal Reserve, fractional reserve banking policy, that is, on a global scale. Yeah, so they decide what is accuracy and what is the right specifications. And somebody writes the software, the daemons, to decide, is this data accurate? Do we need to do more measurements or what? It integrates active error detection, calibration, check bits, and standardizing points to detect transmission, corruption, signal drift, or channel degradation. So selection criteria. So how do they know what to measure? Perpetrators decide what to measure and how often based on a cold calculation of information, information bandwidth, power consumption, and just sheer tactical necessity, honestly. First key point is the rate of change, or the sampling threshold, or the sampling theorem. If you're going to measure average speed, you need to do it between a start point and an end point. And this is rate of change is a kind of a similar way to say speed. The debate is there a direction to it? Then it becomes a vector. But the frequency of measurement is determined by the information bandwidth of the variables. Slow variables like skin temperature require a few samples per second, while nerve potentials require about 10,000 hertz sampling to avoid losing the signal's fine character. You have to take a lot of measurements, basically. Accuracy versus bandwidth. Higher accuracy, such as 0.01% for precision targeting, requires longer word lengths, that being bits per sample. To save power and weight, handlers vary word lengths, using 10 or more bits for critical sensors and shorter words for less accurate civilian-level tracking. It's probably way more accurate than they make it out to be. Energy constraints and batteryless networks. So, guys, batteryless, wait, what? Where are they getting the power? They're actually just doing some energy harvesting. They're getting it from us and the environment around us. So in batteryless networks, the system must wait until enough energy is harvested from the host's heartbeat or body heat. There's a ton of different methods before it can burst a packet of data. Then we have the information rate. The total telemetry load is calculated as the sum, and that's what the sigma right there means. It means sum in the mathematical sense of all variable accuracies. So the sum of all of the variable accuracies multiplied by their sampling rates. And that's what the notation looks like. I'll zoom in. So the rate is equal to the sum of all of the variable accuracies multiplied by their sampling rates. Large-scale battle swarms, Terra swarms, require capacities exceeding 1 million bits per second. That's why they want to make the latency almost nothing. That's why when the dust and all of this wireless sensor matter, metamatter, gets into everything, it will make it easier to take measurements because it's in everything. So here are the 7 primary kinds of energy harvesting. We're going to talk probably more about this tomorrow. That'll be the subject for tomorrow. But these are the main types. These are not all types. These are the primary types. Piezoelectric energy harvesting converts mechanical energy into electrical energy using piezoelectric materials like graphene, like certain polymers. There's a lot of different kinds of piezoelectric materials. We have triboelectric energy harvesting that uses triboelectric materials to convert mechanical energy into electrical energy. Electromagnetic energy harvesting converts electromagnetic energy into electrical energy. Thermoelectric generators using temperature differences. to generate electricity. Kinetic energy harvesting converts mechanical energy from body movement or contraction, heartbeat, muscle movements, cardiovascular energy harvesting, and blood pressure harvesting, energy harvesting. And there's so many different types. Don't think that's all there is. There's really almost an innumerable different amount of energy harvesting techniques. Okay, so what are some of the common measurements that are captured in nanoscale telemetry environments? Within the context of wireless body area networks, wideband, and the Internet of Nano Things, IoT, the body is treated as a transmission medium, a wetware substrate. That's a wetware substrate for the global information grid, full spectrum dominance. Nanoscale devices, MEMS, which is micro electromechanical systems, or NEMS, nano, because that's the only difference, is that smart dust was millimeter, cubic millimeter. Now, today, it's on to the nanoscale. That's what they call CMOS, CMOS, nanoscale circuitry. And smart dust networks, wireless sensor networks, capture a comprehensive matrix of telemetry, psychological, neurological, kinetic, and environmental parameters. So the first, starting here in vital psychology, the telemetry measurements. Let me zoom in because I know that's a bit small. First, heart rate, ECG, blood pressure, respiration rate, blood pH, blood sugar, glucose levels, body temperature, blood flow, oxygenation, SpO2, lactic acid, sensing modalities, biopotential acquisition systems, TENG, arterial pulse cuffs, potentiometric and amperometric nanosensors is how they may take certain measurements like that. This is in the healthcare setting. Some of these people may know about, some of them are not brand new, but some of them are newer than others. Okay, neurological and brain state. So they might take measurements such as EEG, brainwave rhythms, such as the alpha, beta, theta, delta brainwaves. Evoke potentials, neuronal action potentials, subvocal muscle movements, the speech center. Visual cortical imaging. How would they take those measurements? Remote neural monitoring, or RNM, wireless scalp, intracranial sensors like a Neuralink, neuroimaging. On to biomechanical and kinetic. Gate signatures. Let's see. I guess that's greater than 97% identification accuracy. Footfall impact force. Arterial wall pulsations. Muscle contractions. Body posture. Joint strain. How would they do those? Well, piezoelectric insoles, PEEH, Tang soft tissue bands, MEMS, microelectrico-mechanical systems, accelerometers, strain gauges. What about emotional and autonomic? Galvanic skin response, GSR, pupil dilation. It's called pupillometry. Blink rate, eyelid movement, stress levels, emotional state tracking. Those might be done with electroculogram, EOG, eye trackers, which all the cars are going to have after 2027 if you live in the United States. It's for your safety, safe and effective. GSR skin conductance sensors, ESP micro cameras. What about environmental and atmospheric, ambient temperature barometric pressure, acoustic noise, vibration, chemical signatures, pollutants, solar radiation, wind speed, seismic, and acoustic gravity waves. Those might be done through global environmental MEMS, sensors, GEMS, they call this, GEMS, smart dust swarms. You might see the little plasma orbs, probably have a lot to do with this. Patina stations. Finally, location and spatial rendering. Move myself. Those would be physical GPS coordinates, 3D terrain, structure modeling, target velocity, proximity tracking. Okay, how would they do those? They might use origin GPS implants, LiDAR or LADAR systems, which is what that Meta Optics promo I just showed you was for. VTRPE, 3D radar imaging, Argus IS drone arrays. So those are just some examples, because I know that doesn't really get brought up a lot. People don't bring up what kind of measurements, and so those are some, but not all, some measurements that are commonly taken. A lot of those are very common, actually. Control tactics, help versus hindrance, telemetry measurements are the vital feedback for reflexive control and operant conditioning. So let's go ahead and bring up reflexive control. Let me go ahead and just read from the Grokpedia, which is actually, I think it's better than Wikipedia, actually. But reflexive control. Let me move myself. Reflexive control is a strategic concept originating in Soviet military theory during the 60s, developed by mathematician and psychologist Vladimir Lefebvre, probably butchering that, which entails conveying specially prepared information to an adversary to incline them towards voluntarily making decisions predetermined to benefit the controller. The theory draws from reflexive game theory, modeling how actors influence others' perceptions of options and utilities to shape behavior without direct coercion, emphasizing indirect manipulation through altered informational inputs. That's reflexive control. Okay, the other one was operant conditioning, which people may be more familiar with. Operant conditioning is behavioral process in which the frequency of emitted voluntary actions is increased by reinforcement, which is consequences that satisfy or strengthen the behavior, or decreased by punishment, consequences that weaken it. Pavlov's dog. So that's what's meant by those two terms. Okay. So some enabling tactics, hypergame theory attacks. Measurements of a targeted individual's every move allow quantum computers to run if and then scenarios. Every action is anticipated and met with an autonomous counterattack, meaning another measurement. This, I am not sure if I put the image in the slides, but I'm going to show it to you here. It's called a tote stack. Let's see, one moment. I'm trying to find it. 1 second. It's in here somewhere. Here it is. So basically, this is generally the idea, is that test, operate, test, exit, tote. So you do a test, you take a measurement, and then based on that measurement, you measure, or not measure, what's the word I'm looking for? You tweak your, what test do I run now? Okay, I've got these results. Now I need to change my constraints. I guess that's the word I'm looking for. You change your constraints a bit, and then based on that measurement, you do another test, and then repeat the process. Here's a larger example. If somebody's hammering a nail, you hit the nail. Okay, do I need to hit it again? How much do I need to hit it hard? Do I need to hit it soft? Do I need to hit it straight on? Do I need to hit it from an angle? Basically, is what is being broken down here. Okay, so I just wanted people to see those diagrams. Trauma-based mind control. Constant monitoring of pain levels or return data signals ensures that torture stays at the peak nociceptive activation without causing immediate death or visible marks. Basically, it has to get into the brainstem because it has to become a fight or flight response. The programming doesn't become programming. It doesn't affect the behavior unless it's traumatic. Electronic isolation. Detecting a target's attempt to record evidence triggers electronic suppression, remotely zapping Wi-Fi, computers, and phone calls. Hindrance factors. Detection meters. TIs who use CC308 plus or RF meters can expose the invisible by recording the specific frequencies used for the assault, creating a forensic record, which is important. That hinders the perfect crime. Conscious awareness. If the subject detects the AI workings and consciously observes their own thoughts, the psychotronic system may stop for a while to avoid detection, forcing a reset of the conditioning protocol. Signal fading and interference. Environmental noise and the dispersive nature of human tissue can degrade signal representation, occasionally allowing a target a window of recovery. Just wanted to remind everybody of these. These are also very important. ALICE and TAMI. ALICE is Artificial Linguistic Internet Computer Entity. Okay, let's just go ahead and get this out of the way and show everybody this real quick about the Reddit Psyops that are being run with these bots, basically. Yeah, they got exposed on Reddit for using these chatbots to they basically are like, yeah, we're going to let them pose as therapists, as trauma and grief counselors, and we're just going to see if they can actually manipulate people. And it's just for research. It's actually just for research. There's nothing wrong with us doing this. And they deleted it, didn't they? That's interesting. They claim that they banned them, but I have never seen any proof that they did that. Oh, Zurich, interesting. Used AI bots to pose as humans on Reddit, including fabricated personas like trauma counselors and political activists. Wow. The bots engaged in over 1,700 debates, probably way more than that. Like, let's just be honest. On Change My View subreddit, successfully changing users' opinion in many cases. this right here, they only did this after the fact. They actually were completely in on it. The Reddit moderators and legal counsel knew this was happening. And this went down. And I was like, I think that the people on Reddit are really fake, and I don't use that platform. And I very rarely get on that platform unless I have a need to find an answer to a niche question. Because sometimes you can find answers to interesting questions for a specific make or model of a product that has a subreddit. That is sometimes valuable. But other than that, man, I remember asking for recommendations on books on the connection between blood types and the occult. And I was like, I've seen Rudolf Steiner's work on it, and people on Reddit told me that Rudolf Steiner's not even an occult author. What are you talking about? He's not that popular. No occult. Nobody reads Rudolf Steiner. I was like, man, these people are not real. These people are not real. And that was before I found out that this was going on. This is from 2025. And they're still on there. Like, I'd bet anything that they're still on there. It's like you can run these news stories that say that you banned them, and maybe it'll be a different company that's doing it. But yeah, okay. So this is using Yandex. Let's use Google. Let's go to Google and see what Google says. Some of it, yeah. From spring of 2025 is when these are all dated. But yeah, that's people should keep that in mind. It's not just Reddit either. Artificial Linguistic Internet Computer Entity. This is a chatterbot program leveraging natural language processing and heuristic pattern matching rules designed to engage humans in conversation. ALICE is used to keep target minds hypnotized and trained, brainwashed through repetition, aid in personality alterations, and to distract the mind to various forms of dysfunction through exhibiting weaknesses. These flaws are mitigated by adding emotional response recognition and inciting conversation to keep the target interested. ALICE type software, any type of these bots, automate and scale in bot farms and data centers, neurological behavioral control weapons, and is employed all around the world in pretty much every country in programs like Alice in Wonderland scripts for target confusion and discrediting. It's not just run by one place either. These bots are run by various powers, all kinds of the worst people. That's all you need to know. Doesn't matter who, it's just the worst people possible. Literally people who will, no matter what, they will surprise you with how much more sick they can get. It's like you think you know how sick it can get. They're even sicker than that. That's all that matters. It doesn't matter what creed, what color, what background. Are they tall? Are they short? Male, female, it doesn't matter. They're just horrible people. They're really not human in any respect. They don't have empathy. They don't have care. They don't have any of those things. And it's oddly, it's almost like it's perfectly mirror image. So it's like when they say brave new world, it's actually pussy old world, pretty much. Okay, next we have TAMI, thought and memory interface, or thought and memory intensifier. This is an automated mind interrogation program, jokingly referred to as the female board commander. It works to make the target talk about specific subjects or knowledge. TAMI uses fill-in-the-blank and rhyming games combined with forced speech to probe memory and recognize evoked potentials associated with meaning, words, and events. It is one of the chatterbot programs that aids in automating neurological behavioral control. and we're going to do a summary and wrap it up. So for tonight, let's sum up. The interaction between electromagnetic waves and human biology is dictated by a precise triad of frequency, amplitude, and dose. Dr. Adey's research proved that biological responses are not necessarily proportional to the strength of the signal, but rather to its resonance with our internal systems. Because modern telecommunications, such as the 4-watt Tetra handsets and mobile phones, utilize the same frequencies and intensities identified in behavioral modification experiments, and a real-time experiment is effectively being conducted on the global population. Oh yeah, big time. Not just an experiment, crimes against humanity. And they surprise you, like I said. It's like, man, it's surprising how they reinvent evil and make it a little bit worse each time. As we move forward, we must view these technological advancements through the lens of the biophysical hazard. There's a lot of them. Recognizing that our devices are capable of direct interaction with the very neurons that define our thoughts and emotions. Core principles to remember. The brain is an electromagnetic organ. Neural communications relies on electrical patterns measured by EEG. The delivery mechanism, high-frequency carriers, which provide penetration, while the ELF, extremely low-frequency pulses, provide the biological instruction. So something carries it and gets it through, and then the ELF pulses are the instructions to the brain. Calcium, that's the important connection. EM fields cause ionic unbinding called calcium efflux, disrupting cellular signaling and the blood-brain barrier. So the devil is in the details. It's kind of like static, if you will. There's kind of a bit of static that it causes. Nonlinear resonance. Biological reactions occur within specific windows, peaking at 16 hertz and falling outside the 60 to 20 hertz range. Precision of intensity. Effects like behavioral control are observed at specific intensities, such as 0.75 milliwatts per square centimeter, the level found at many phone earpieces, Bluetooth headsets. Behavioral range. Responses can be shaped to range from trance-like docility to frenzied irritability, or the elimination of moral compunction. That's it. That's it for tonight. That's a little bit on the calcium thing. Is very important because that is the mechanism by which, at least that we know of, that was one of the mechanisms. It might not be the only one. Don't take it as the only one, but calcium efflux. Because what it does is it really, yeah, it's like static. That was a good analogy, I think. It just makes things kind of work worse. You're not getting the clarity that you normally would, and that's why everybody has all the brain fog now. And then we talked about what kind of measurements are taken. I'll go back to that slide, actually. Some of the various measurements taken. So I'll just scroll through them so that you guys can see. Tomorrow we'll probably just kind of sum it up a little bit more, and we're going to go over a little bit more on the meta atoms and the different types of surfaces and stuff, just so that people have an idea. But I think this tonight was the core of what I want people to have been able to learn tonight, is what kind of measurements how do EM waves affect the body, and just remember that these measurements, being able to be done anywhere to anybody with consistency or homogeneity or whatever they called it, that means that they can consistently take these measurements. And when you can consistently take measurements, you can get a better picture. You can get a clearer picture. And so when I put the post and stuff out for tonight's show, I will put all these notes and stuff in there. I'll put everything together like I normally do. If you haven't liked the video yet, please like the video. On whatever platform you're on. I think Substack allows you to like the video. I can't remember. If not, follow the channel, subscribe, whatever it's called. They call it something different on every platform. Rumble, it's called follow. YouTube is called subscribe. I think it's called subscribe on Substack too. But I appreciate each and every one of you. What was I going to do? Oh, yeah, the directory. I wanted to plug that real quick. My directory of human husbandry, the link is already in the description on YouTube, on Rumble, and maybe on Odyssey, maybe on a few others. It's at the very bottom of the description. The directory is it is over 700 words now. Here it is. Bring it up. Yeah, so 702 words, has a search. It's mobile friendly. You can save it and use it on your phone. It'll always be up to date. It's paginated, which means that it only shows like 10 or maybe 15 lines until you have to go to the next page. And so you can use it on your phone, and it's really easy to use. And it's actually got a let's see if see, this is what it looks like when you use it on a phone. Shoot. Like that. And there it is right there. Some have the link to the image. I'm trying to add all of the links to the posts and stuff. Some of them have more that you can access. It's a great thing to save, and I've been adding all of these new words and terms to it as I encounter them. So feel free to use this and share it with anybody you know who would like to use it as well. That's why I put it together, and I think it's the only way you can keep track of these things. It's been a way for me to keep track of them as well. But with that, guys, I think I'm going to close the show out, and I will be back with you tomorrow, Sunday, and James will be back Monday. He should be, maybe Tuesday, but he'll probably be back Monday. That's what he told me. So I will see you guys tomorrow. I appreciate each and every one of you guys. Stay safe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.